Hello everyone. Welcome to my Survivor tier list for Survivor rank. Um, I decided to make this because I don't think that there's any actual recent tier lists that have come out, considering the changes to a few different characters and stuff. So I decided to I've been playing a lot of Hunter recently, and I've been kind of observing what kind of survivors and what kind of picks are being used at the highest tiers. Um, so I decided that I'm going to make this video to kind of educate what people are playing at the highest tiers of Survivor rank, and what you can learn from what people are doing at the top echelons of gameplay. Um, the main reason I wanted to make this is because I think that there's a lot of misinformation about what survivors are good or what survivors are bad. So I kind of just wanted to set the record straight and just kind of give an explanation for a lot of these picks that are being used in the highest tiers. So without wasting your time, because a lot of tier lists will just go on for 20 minutes and not actually talk about anything, I've given you the list right here at the start of the video, so you don't have to fucking skip to the end of it. And I'm going to basically give an explanation for all of the tiers before I actually get into going to talk about the survivors, and then I will give a quick recap on every single survivor and why they are in the tier. So hopefully I won't have to keep you here for too long if you want to watch the whole video. So I will get right into it. I'll just start explaining the tiers. So Outclassed is basically what it sounds like. I don't think a lot of these survivors are necessarily bad. I think they are very usable, especially up until like the highest tiers. I feel like a lot of these survivors are pretty usable if you want to one trick them. But there are characters that just do their job better. So I think Outclassed is a pretty nice encapsulating word for a lot of these survivors. Tie farmers is basically what it sounds like. You pick these characters in specific comps in order to farm ties. It's usually a little bit map dependent, or it's usually a little bit comp dependent, but generally these characters are good for farming ties. But winning with them can be a little bit tricky. Niche means they are good in some situations, with some comps against some hunters. I think that they are usable, and I think that they are good in specific situations, hence why they're niche. But if you're going to just kind of pick a generalist survivor that does well in every single situation, these survivors are not who you want to be picking. I think that they're good in certain spots, but not good in other spots. Niche Plus is basically just the same thing, but they are a lot better at what they do. So they are obviously they are niche in the fact that they're not good in every single situation, but they are better than the survivors in the tier below them in terms of being good at their niche. So again, they are not generalist survivors, but I would say some of these niche plus survivors are better than some of these survivors in the versatile tiers. So I will talk about more about that when I get to it. Versatile basically means they're good in most spots. A lot of situations you would be fine picking these survivors, and they would do their job well. So you don't really have to worry about map, or sometimes you have to worry about matchup, but not often. But generally you don't have to worry about map dependency or comp dependency. You can just kind of pick these survivors and just do well. Versatile Plus is again basically that, but better. These survivors are basically good in every single scenario. They are basically good in a lot of ways. And you can pretty much always pick them and they can do well. Some of these survivors do a lot better on certain maps and in certain situations. But they are generally good enough to the point that they won't be a niche. And meta is you are pretty much always happy to pick them. They are stronger than Versatile Plus in most situations, and they are extremely powerful in their own right. So yeah, I think with that out of the way, I'm just going to start from the bottom, I think, and I'm just going to work my way up to the top. So, just to clarify as well, tier order matters. So, for example, the left person in the tier is the best, and the right person in the tier is the worst. So we will go from, in my opinion, the worst survivor in the game, which is Doctor, and we will move up and up and up until eventually we get to Mercenary. So I'll start off with Doctor. I know a lot of people like Doctor in lower tiers, but you will be hard for us to find a single Doctor in a higher rank. Obviously, Doctor is kind of known as the Joseph counter, or the Percy counter, or some other thing, but she's not even particularly good at. I mean, she's a fine Joseph counter. She's good at countering Joseph, but apart from that, is bro, who plays Joseph? Like, Joseph is like such a one-trick character, and you won't see them that often, especially once you get out of like Saber, because like there are a lot of like Joseph one-tricks in like kind of lower tiers, but like once you reach like the higher tiers, like you will be hard-pressed to find a Joseph. Doctor is just a weak kiter. Like I think the thing about Outclass is that they are pretty much just worse versions of like survivors in higher tiers. So Doctor is like just worse than Barmaid in like pretty much every single way. And if you want a character that can just like run in and body block and like just be a kind of a nuisance, then Gardener also does that job pretty well, and then Wildling also does that job kind of well. And then like if you're late game, then like Puppeteer kind of does it well as well and stuff like that. It's like, and then also like you'd rather just have like someone stunning or knocking back like a batter. Like Doctor is just kind of mid. Like she can be good in certain spots, and I think she's good in certain matchups, but like you have no reason to really ever pick Doctor. So, and that's why I think that she is the worst survivor in the game. Enchantress kind of follows a similar pipeline, where she is literally just Antiquarian but worse, like way worse. Maybe I'm rating her a little bit lowly, but I really do not respect Enchantress. Like, Enchantress's free stack is like okay, but you only really get one of them per game in like a normal game when you're getting tunneled. And if you're not getting tunneled, then you get like one or two little shitter stuns where it's like Antiquarian gets like 8 or 9 of them. And like so she's a bad harasser, she's a bad kiter, and like her decoding speed is base, which is cool, but like so is Antiquarian's. You know what I mean? And it's like why would you ever pick Enchantress when Antiquarian is in the game? So I think for that reason I really do not respect Enchantress as a survivor. I think she does need a pretty sizable buff. But yeah, as of now she is not really pickable when Antiquarian is in the game. Like, if you want to learn Enchantress, just learn Antiquarian instead. Thief, I don't think is as bad as he was. I think Thief is good. Well, he's not good, but he's fine. Like, you can definitely make Thief work. But the problem with Thief is that, like, he has way too many bad matchups, and he has way too many bad areas to the point where it's, like, I don't know, like, he's kind of bad. Like, if you face, like, if you face an opera singer, like, good fucking luck, right? And if you face like someone with a really long hitbox, like like a Feaster or Wu Chang, like again, good luck. Like because they'll outrange your flashlights. Like it's pathetic. I think he's good versus certain hunters, but then again, so is Doctor and so is Enchantress. So I think Thief is better than he was. You know, like a few seasons ago when he was like hot garbage. But I think he's like not really pickable. I still think he's like. You can kind of pick him, and you can make him work, and you can win games with him, and you can kite well with him, but it's like, he is just basically worse than like than like most of the other kiters, in like pretty much every regard. Lucky Guy's not as bad as he used to be, again. Thief, like, he's kind of in the same situation as Thief, where he does have his little niches, and he does have like scenarios he can work, but it's like, Lucky Guy is just, he wastes so much time running around looking for chests and whatever garbage that you'd rather just be decoding. Like, you'd rather just pick Coordinator in, like, every single situation than Lucky Guy. Because, like, I feel like the time you spend running around looking for a chest, like, getting something like a perfume and a flare gun, is, like, worse than, like, just like, straight decoding from the start of the game, and also having a better flare gun, right? And then there's also a chance that you can just miss your item, and then you're stuck with, like, one elbow pad instead of a flare, and it's like, what the hell do you do? Like... It's I feel like he provides not enough value for how much decoding progress you lose picking him. So I don't think he's particularly good. Little Girl is like meh. Like a lot of hunters will just like hard counter her, like they're way too mobile for her to effectively use. She's like a fine support late game, and she like the fact that she can attach onto other people is pretty useful when she's getting tunneled. But apart from that, I don't think she really has a place in the meta, and I think mobile hunters counter her way too much, and hunters with long-range abilities, and hunters that can predict like the movement. Like for example, like a Feaster can place a tentacle and then slam her like while she's in her dash, or like Fool's Gold could chip her with terrain, or like Ifakwa could just like pull her out of her ability, or things like this, right? Like she's very mobile. Novelist I think suffers kind of a similar issue to the other characters in this list, whereas he kind of just like doesn't have as much of an ability to kite and harass as the other characters do. I think Novelist and Magician are noticeably better than the rest of the people in this list. because I think they are actually pretty strong, especially if you one-trick them. But I just don't think that they're really like at a competitive level if you're going to talk at like the top level of survivors. Like I say, Magician is the same thing. Like he is, like, why would you pick Magician when in a lot of situations you could just pick Patient? You know what I mean? I feel like it's Patient is going to be getting a lot more value out of his hooks than Magician is out of his wand. But again, like, Magician and Novelist aren't bad. I mean, Little Girl isn't that bad, but like she's noticeably worse than these two, I think. So I think put these two in a little bit of a different category. There could be like an Outclassed plus, I guess, if you really wanted to be like pedantic about it. So yeah, type bombers, they're pretty self-explanatory. Mind's Eye, you just pick her on fucking Hospital, and then like you just farm a free tie because you can't really choose the Mind's Eye until late game because she's in Hospital. Mind's Eye is like fine in like a lot of situations, but she is still too niche, and she just kind of exists to farm ties. She's a lot better now that the meta has evolved into taking Windows Flywheel rather than like taking borrowed time on kiters that don't really need it. So again, that also encourages her to be a tie farmer. Composer is basically the same thing, but like he's a little bit less risky than Mind's Eye, and he can still kind of like have some agency by himself. But I think he's in kind of a similar spot to Mind's Eye. Embalmer literally exists to farm ties. Like you just chase the Embalmer first. He just rescues himself. He wastes a lot of time. Like he just exists to be a tie farmer. And then Painter is like you can like you kind of pick him in comps where you can not really like want to rescue him first, and then like you can leave him on share for a while, finish all your ciphers, and then like rescue him, and he can get the painting off. Like he's good for farming ties. His just kind of gameplay loop encourages it with his ability to not go past half on share. So I think these four don't really need much explanation. I think they're pretty self-explanatory as to why they're in this tier. So I suppose I can just move on. Professor is better than he was. If Professor, like, with Professor's buff where he can now stop stuns, and like I think he got a cooldown decrease as well. Professor is no longer in. Professor would have been like here, maybe where Enchantress is, like probably here. Actually no, he would be like here. Yeah, he would be here before his buff. But he has moved up to the niche tier because now he's pretty good against hunters like Anne, who can stun him reliably. I still don't think he's good. I think it's still way too easy to bait out his scales, but overall I think he is a lot more viable than he was. And I think he still has some potential in the meta. But overall, I think he is too niche to be really picked often in a competitive setting. I think he's a very specific counter pick. But he's not as bad as he used to be. In terms of Perfumer, I think she is... I think a lot of people will be surprised at how low I placed Perfumer, but I think it's deserved. Because the thing is about Perfumer is that she has so many counters. Like, think about it. Like, Perfumer really doesn't like being chased by someone who likes presence. She doesn't like being chased by someone who has chip. She doesn't like being chased by someone who can retain their power after a perfume. You know, someone like an Ivy can she can retain Ivy's fear if she gets like hit, like, and if she gets like hit, if she perfumes on 80 fear and then perfumes back, then she will like retain the 80 fear, right? Things like that, like a Naiad Water as well. So she doesn't like being chased by people who like to farm presence. She doesn't like being chased by chip. She doesn't like being chased by people who can maintain stacks. So she has a lot of counters. And overall, I think she's nowhere near as strong as she like was when she first released. I still think she's good in certain matchups. Like, for example, she's very good against like a Mary or like a Geisha. But overall, I think she is a lot weaker than she used to be, and I don't think she deserves to be any higher than Niche. So maybe she could. Maybe you could argue that she's like here, like maybe like here, but like it's kind of semantics. I think she is pretty poor in the current meta, considering how unreliable she is in regards to like her counter picks and stuff. Ento, I think, is better than a lot of people give her credit for. I think she's quite map dependent, but she can be very strong on maps like Hospital. Be very strong on maps like Leo's Memory. And she's also strong on Lakeside because she can abuse Small Boat and Big Boat. Areas that have really strong looping potential but have a lot of like open ground where a lot of your kite just involves walking. Ento is extremely strong. Hospital in particular is her best map and her best area. because Hospital is basically just walking. And of course, Ento's speed boost is really, really, really valuable, and it's like characters like Lawyer can really perform well in areas like that because of the increased movement speed boost. But except Ento gets that and also more, so I think Ento is very, very strong. Her no trail is also very helpful. The only thing that kind of hurts Ento is like the revealing of her location, which I think does hamper her mobility and her ability to double back very, very much. If she didn't have that, then I'm pretty sure she would be like here, but she does. So alas, she is stuck in the bottom of niche. But I think she is still good, and she is still very, very playable, and she's a lot better than people give her credit for. Excuse me. Kawad is fine. I really have no issue with Kawad. She's just not as good as she used to be, but I think this placement is a little bit unfair on her because I don't think she's necessarily bad by any means, but I think Kawad just has not enough power and oomph in her kit to really compete at the highest level. That being said, I don't think she's bad. I think she's just a little bit on the underwhelming side at the moment, but I do think she is fine. To be honest, her placement is a little bit low. Looking at the list again, I think she should probably be like somewhere up here. Like she could probably be like here and it would look fine, but I'm just gonna keep her where she was for the sake of posterity. But she could be like, you could argue that she's up here. Jonas is probably the worst rescuer. Like she's strong against certain hunters, but she gets hard countered by others. And she can do well, and she can be a decent kiter, but I think, like, why would you ever pick Journalist when you could just pick Mercenary or First Officer? Or, like, even like an Aeroplanist or Weeping Clown can do her job kind of better than her, and they also don't have the decoding debuff. So I think Journalist is here for a reason. Again, I don't think she's necessarily bad, and I think she is good into certain matchups, but I think she is just the worst rescuer. And she has overtaken that place from Gravekeeper, who used to be the worst rescuer, and before his buffs, I would have probably placed him here. But now that he's been buffed, and now that he has a little bit more power in his kit with the cooldown reduction and like the weird like jump out of shovel ability, which isn't that good, but can be useful in certain situations, I think he's a lot better than he used to be. And so for that reason, he has gone up in the tier list. He has moved from Outclassed to Niche. I don't think he is necessarily a really viable rescuer, but I think he is perfectly fine, and I think he can do his job well. Postman used to be really good when his decoding letter was 20%, but now it's 10%, and he is a lot less good. He's more of a supporting character now, and it's like fine. Like, he's fine at doing his job. Like, I think Urgent Letter is still very, very, very strong, and I think decoding letter is still okay. But in terms of how he compares to how he used to be, I don't think he's particularly good. His dog giving a stun is a lot better though. Like, I think the fact that his dog gives a stun makes him a lot better than he was before. And especially when you pair it with characters like Puppeteer, or like, that can like block hits after like you get a rescue off. Like, I think it's pretty valuable in some of the comps. So he is a lot less fragile than he was before as well. But other than that, I think Postman is not that good. Explorer is weird. He's in Niche Plus, but you could really argue that he's here. But honestly, some people would argue that he's like here, but I don't think he is because he's way too map dependent, I think. Explorer is really weird. I think he's honestly pretty good, but it's the fact that he's so much different of a gameplay loop to other survivors that he's kind of hard to put in a tier list like this because he's so different. He is one of two decoders that can contribute decoding progress off of the chair. The only other one is Mechanic, because obviously he drops his page and then you can use the page to do like whatever else. So he's the only one who can give decoding progress after being chaired. But of course he actually has to do the digging in the first place, which Mechanic does not have to do. All she has to do is hide her door. So I think Explorer is good, and I think he's good in certain comps, and I think he's good in certain maps, and I think you can use him well. There's an argument that he could be higher. I don't think he is, but I would like to hear people's opinions on that. So yeah, I would put Explorer right here. Forward and Batter are admittedly a little bit low, because I think that they are a little bit risk-reward heavy. I think that in, I'd say, about 80% of scenarios, they are better than Cowboy. And I think a lot of people would disagree with me putting Cowboy higher than these two. But the reason I did is because Forward and Batter have a lot of reliance on actually being useful to their team. And if they're not useful, then they end up becoming a massive liability, right? Like, for example, you have a forward that runs up and he's not decoding and he sits there and harasses and stuff, right? If forward gets hit during that harass, then it throws the entire like gameplay loop on its head. And forward can no longer rescue unless he wants to do like a big stun, in which case he could just get hit again, or like trump card excitemented on. I think excitement is better in the current meta than it used to be, so I think these two are a lot weaker as a result. And I think the fact that they have slower decoding than Cowboy, and they're also kind of... Well, Forward isn't worse self-sustaining, but Batter definitely is. Batter definitely has a worse kite than Cowboy, I would argue. So I think because these two are so risk-reward heavy, I think that they deserve to be lower than Cowboy, because Cowboy is much more of a staple survivor. He can just kind of do his job, and then like it's a lot safer to play Cowboy than it is to play these two. But when these are played well, they are better than Cowboy. But if they're not played well, then they are single-handedly game losing. So that's the reason I would put these two in this tier list. Cheerleader is fine. She's a good kiter. She's very, very good kiter. She's very powerful. Her cooldown reduction is very strong. Her harass is like pretty good. There's a case that she could be higher, but I think Cheerleader has kind of fallen off recently. In my opinion, anyway. I don't see as many cheerleaders as I used to, for sure. I don't know if this is indicative of just kind of solo queue meta or just like people not wanting to play her, but I think she is a lot weaker than she was. And overall, I'm pretty sure she deserves to be in this kind of like niche plus area where like she's very, very good in certain spots, and she's very, very good versus certain survivors, and she's very good with certain characters. Like for example, Batter and Perfumer both really appreciate having a cheerleader on their team, right? To get their cooldown reduction. Like Batter can do a triple thing. Batter can do a triple hit instead of like a double hit. So you can hit and then you can get cheerleader to reduce your cooldown. You can hit again, and then you can use rampage and hit again. So these two have a fantastic synergy with one another. But other than that, I think cheerleader is kind of like, she's just good and solid, and I think she is fine here. Because again, she is quite comp dependent, and she does kind of need teammates that can utilize her cooldown in order to be like really, really good. She would be in versatile if she didn't have that prerequisite, but she does. So yeah. Prisoner is really good on Leos. He's really good on Hospital, and he's like fine on Red Church, I guess. But like apart from that, like I think he's very, very strong on certain maps, and he's very, very like meh on other maps. So that's why he's in niche. But in regards to his actual niche, I think he is very, very powerful. And he can be very, very good with harassers or like a mercenary in his team, because obviously he can just finish their cipher quickly and move to helping other people with the ciphers. The reason I think Prisoner is strong is because he's able to stay in one really strong area for the majority of the game. He can contribute to like 2.5 ciphers from Hospital, which is like what you want from a decoder, right? As opposed to like a Mind's Eye, where she finishes her first cipher the fastest, and then she moves out, and then she can just get caught in the middle of like buttfuck nowhere, right? So I think Prisoner has a very strong niche, and he has a very strong ability, but I think he's way too map dependent to be any higher. Pharaoh Lady is weird because she's not really... I don't really consider Pharaoh a decoder. Like, she is a decoder, but she's kind of just like a way better version of Composer. Whereas Pharaoh Lady can really do some like tricky stuff, and she can really be like a nuisance to kite and chase. But she also doesn't decode that fast. But the ability to decode another cipher quickly when one cipher is being pressured is very... It's not used that often, but it can save games. But I think Pharaoh Lady, like, by herself is very self-sustaining decoder, and she is just very, like, reliable overall. So I think her placement here is justified. I've already talked about Cowboy. I think he's a safer but less he has lower lows and he has lower lows but lower highs than higher lows but lower highs than these two, is essentially what I think. He's a very strong kiter. He's pretty good at harassing. And in some certain maps and some certain situations, he's very good. I know I'm saying a lot of the same things for all of these like niche characters, like they're strong in certain situations and they're very strong in this and that, but that is the point of the niche tier, right? Like Cowboy is like very good in open maps, things like ever sleeping, where he can really take advantage of the fact that you're in the open and can't really harass him or can't really reach him unless he makes like a mistake, or you're like a very mobile hunter. So I think Cowboy overall is a very safe harasser, and he can waste a lot of time just by being in the game. And he's also an extremely strong transitional character. I think he's very strong versus certain hunters, and I think he is overall a pretty solid pick. Patient is, once again, really good on certain maps. He's amazing on Hospital. He's amazing on Lakeside. He's amazing on Moonlit, and he's not that good on anything else. But he is really good on those 3 maps. Like especially like first and last stop of Moonlit, he's broken. Big Boat, he's broken. Small Boat, he's broken. To be honest, main building, in main building Hospital, he can hook in from like 7 different spots. Leo's memory, he's also pretty decent with a factory loop because he can jump off the top. He's just overall on certain spots and certain maps, he's basically unchaseable, which is very powerful. But if you compare him to characters like Acrobat, Acrobat can be a lot more useful than a Patient, and on both a lot more situations and in terms of like harassing and stuff. So I think Patient is worse than Acro, but he is very powerful in his own right, and if you pick him in the right spot, then he is practically unchaseable. So I think being near the top of Niche Plus is a very justifiable placement for him. Toy Merchant buff made her really good. If I'm being honest with you, I think Toy Merchant used to be like probably here, like maybe here-ish, like kind of around this area, but this has boosted her right to the top of Niche Plus. She'll obviously never be in Versatile because she's like hot garbage on Arms, and she's hot garbage on Church, and she's hot garbage on like a couple of other maps, but Toy Merchant is broken on Leo's, she is broken on Moonlit, she is broken on Boat, on Lakeside, and she is like pretty good on like some of them out. She's good on Ever Sleeping as well, to be honest, because you can hook, because you can spawn mid and then you can spawn a catapult that goes into both 2 stories right from the middle cipher. So she is very strong on Ever Sleeping as well. The fact that she can now allow her teammates to use items so easily is very strong, and especially considering you have the meta of survivors right now is like Mercenary and First Officer, the meta of Rescuers, Mercenary and First Officer. So by that logic, you can give them like a perfume or something, or you can give them a syringe, and because they don't have to use all their items to actually use your item, it's a very powerful ability. So I think her buff is very strong. Her movement speed buff got a little bit underrated. I think it is very good, because imagine you're playing on Leo's memory, right? And then you catapult to the middle. Excuse me, you catapult to Factory, you're going to get a benefit from that movement speed buff, and then you can hop off of the top of Factory, and then you can fly around and do like whatever bullshit you want to do, right? So I think she is very strong, and I think she is, her buff has made her one of the best survivors to pick in certain situations, and I think she will skyrocket in viability because of it. Female Dancer has been good for ages. She's really good on a lot of maps. Red Church she's good on, Ever Sleeping she's good on, Hospital she's good on, Leo's Memory she's like kind of good on, so on and so forth. I think she's like usable on like pretty much every map, but she excels on certain maps, which is the reason that I think she deserves to be a niche. There are some dancing spots, or there are some box spots which are like pretty disgusting. Like there's this one in Arms Factory, where you put it like behind like the metal fence in Factory. And then like they have to walk all the way around to break it, and then walk all the way around again to like reach you again. So like it's not only placing them under pallets and stuff, it's placing them in like really obnoxious areas that like can support a lot of areas from a spot that's really annoying to go and break, right? So I think Female Dancer is really strong. She has been strong for a long time, ever since her like buff ages ago that gave her the twirl. She did get nerfed like a good while ago, where she can only stack up to 2 slow boxes on a hunter now instead of 3. But it's like, who cares? Like you just give the survivor a fast box instead. Like it's fine. Like it's no diff. I mean, besides, you're never placing 3 boxes in one area anyway. You're placing 2 boxes and you're keeping one for yourself. So In that regard, I think Female Dancer is one of the best survivors to pick in certain situations. Like I said earlier, I think like a good amount of these survivors are better in a lot of situations than a lot of these like versatile survivors, right? Like I think Female Dancer is a lot better in certain situations than like all of these characters, right? Like all of them. Like on Arms Factory, spawning bottom right, I would rather have a Female Dancer than like any of these survivors, as long as the comp can accommodate her. Like I think she is very, very powerful. And she, if we were doing like an S tier, A tier, whatever list, I think she would be like A plus, like near the top of A plus. I think she's very powerful along with Toy Merchant. These are both characters that are severely underrated in like the middle to lower tiers, and I think deserve a lot more play, especially when you're playing as a 4-stack VC. Whoopsies. Wildling. Wildling is weird. I will tell you now, there is a very good chance that you're playing Wildling wrong. Like you are not meant to play Wildling as a harasser. You're meant to play Wildling as a rescuer. The fact that you can get on your ball and block 2 hits, and then get to the chair with increased movement speed is disgusting. He is basically even though Gravekeeper got buffed, he is basically just Gravekeeper but better because he has infinite balls, he has infinite hit blocking capability, and he has harassing capability. Like you don't want to play Wildling as a primary harasser, but you can still harass with him. You can waste a lot of time with Wildling, and you can be very obnoxious as well as being a very competent rescuer. So I think Wildling is good in basically any situation. The reason he's at the bottom of versatile is because I think a lot of people troll with Wildling and they play him wrong, and they play him primarily as a harasser and things like that. But I think overall he is very, very, very strong, and there's a reason you're seeing him a lot in tournament play, and I think we'll see a lot of him in Koa as well. So yeah, that's Wildling. Puppeteer is just generally really good, can block a lot of hits, can do a lot of bullshit. Late game is basically unchaseable as a first kite because you know he can like block hits and stuff after you get off chair. He's just a very strong self-sustaining character, and I think he's good in basically any situation. I think he has a bit less power than the people above him in terms of like actually affecting the game, because Puppeteer is basically reduced to like a little bit. He's basically reduced to like a rescuer that's like slightly worse than like a mercenary and first officer, which is the reason he's kind of low. But he is basically unchaseable, and the fact that he's unchaseable is a very strong trait in itself, so that's why I think he deserves to be in versatile. Barmaid is one of the best supports in the game. She's also a very good kiter. Having a Barmaid on the same team as a mercenary is always really obnoxious for everyone to deal with, and she's also a good counter versus certain hunters. Her speed drink is fantastic. Her kiting ability itself is like fine. Like I have no issues with Barmaid's kiting whatsoever. And I think I just have no issues with Barmaid at all. I think she's probably the most balanced survivor in the game, and I think she is very useful in pretty much any scenario. She is best when you have healing debuffs on your team, namely Mercenary, but I think she is still very strong in her own right, and she can do a lot of work by herself. Knight is one of the new survivors. He is the newest survivor at the time of making this, and I think he is very, very good. There's a case where you could put him in Niche Plus because he hard counters certain rescuers. But I think for me, I think Knight is good enough in pretty much every scenario to the point that he can be put in versatile. The fact that you can rescue with him and still carry a kiting ability on him is very, very powerful because of the fact that he can do the half like damage thingy if he rescues from range. So you can take like windows on him, and you can basically have an unchaseable rescuer that can rescue from range. I think he's very, very strong. You could also take Tide and do 2 rescues in one game, which is very powerful when you pair it with Psychologist, because you can rescue with like traditional means, and then you can rescue again with a Psychologist heal. I think that's very, very good. But overall, I think he is very, very strong. I think he'll probably go up in the tier list as time goes on, as people learn the correct situations to pick him, and in general kind of recognize his viability. But yeah, I think Knight is very, very strong and deserves to be high on this tier list. Prospector again is just a really solid kiter. He is very good in his own right. He's very self-sustaining, he can harass. He's basically a jack of all trades as a survivor. He has base decoding, he has good kiting, he has a movement speed buff, he can harass, he can rescue decently-ish. Like, I think there is no situation where you wouldn't want a Prospector on your team. There are certain like characters that obviously counter him, but I don't think it's enough to really dampen his viability. And I think Prospector overall is a survivor that you're never unhappy to see on your team, unless they're trash, in which case you are very unhappy because he's kind of difficult. But yeah, I think you're never unhappy to see a Prospector on your team, and I think he is just the definition of versatile, kind of like Barmaid. I think Barmaid and Prospector have a similar spot in the meta, where it's like basically never bad to pick them. Lawyer is probably the best survivor to be putting in the good kiting areas like Leos and boats and boat and things like that, so like main building. Movement speed is a vastly underrated stat. I think people are really underestimating how broken 3.5% movement speed buff is. It's very, very good. Obviously, it takes him a while to get there. But movement speed is an invaluable tool. It's incredibly, incredibly powerful to move faster, especially in the areas that Lawyer likes to kite in, which is kind of what I was talking about with Ento earlier, where he can move faster around Big Boat, he can move faster around Hospital. The majority of those kites are him walking. So, in that regard, he is just really good. He's getting 3.5% more distance on you, which is a lot. He's moving a lot faster than you should be. And obviously, like the fact that you can exactly tell your teammates' rotations, and you know who the hunter is, and you know where they're coming from, all very powerful. And it doesn't come with the downside of being incredibly fragile like Mind's Eye is. So Lawyer is basically a kiter in the current meta, but he does have decoding capabilities. So I think he's basically never bad to pick. I think he's very usable on every map. A lot of people don't think he's usable on like Church or something like that, but I think spawning him at the top in Shack and being able to transition into mid, and then from there maybe going to Graveyard is very, very strong. So overall, I think Lawyer deserves to be near the top of versatile. Gardener is really good. Gardener is way better than people think she is. Being able to block a hit at the start of the game is very, very strong, especially considering that a lot of the meta hunters right now have a lot of mobility. You know, characters like Goatman, characters like Opera can catch up to her really, really quickly. So they basically will always have to be forced to swing into her bubble. It's also useful in spots like First Stop on Moonlit, because she can just take the coaster and not have to worry about getting hit out of it. She can basically just sit in there and wait, which is pretty funny. But Gardener is very good. She has a self-sustaining bubble that she can rescue on half with. She has really good kiting capability. The chair breaking doesn't really like that useful that often, but I think it is just kind of like a nice add-on, because I think the power of Gardener comes with her hit blocking, but then also she can sometimes block chairs, which is like sometimes it lets them struggle, especially when you're playing with like a cowboy or something. So I think Gardener is very underutilized, and I think she should be played more, because she is basically just Seer, but like you can use him in like, you can't really support your teammates, but rather you're better at supporting yourself. So I think Gardener is a lot better than people give her credit for. Weeping Clown, we're going into Versatile Plus now, so I think all of these survivors are incredibly good. I think all of these survivors, these top two tiers are basically the meta. Weeping Clown is really good. It's basically a guaranteed rescue. It's a very like portable stun that you can use at like any point. Like what we were talking about this earlier, but like why would you play Enchantress when you could play Weeping Clown? Like Weeping Clown has so much better, like so much like more utility in his stuns. Like you can do it from range, you can do it really quickly, you can do it like on command. And on top of that, like you can also use it as like a transition tool, and it's a very, very strong transition tool with that. If you're not playing versus a hunter who can like directly counter you like Gamekeeper, Weeping Clown can do some disgusting work. So I think Weeping Clown is really, really strong. Aeroplanist is also very, very strong. Aeroplanist has been strong since his release. I still don't understand why he gets to decode faster, even though he's essentially a rescuer. I will never understand that. But Aeroplanist is very good. He's really hard to chase, he's really hard to camp against, and he is really hard to deal with overall. So I think Aeroplanist is very, very generalist. He's good at pretty much everything. And there is no reason why you shouldn't be picking Aeroplanist in like a lot of situations. I think he's also very underplayed. I don't think enough people play Aeroplanist in any EU, considering how good he is. So if you want a new main, and you want a character that not many people know how to play against, Aeroplanist is your boy, I think. Excuse me, I had to cough. Psychologist. Psychologist, very good. Probably, I mean, one of the best supports in the game. being able to take 3 hits is extremely strong. Being able to not die for like, how long is it? I think it's 40 seconds. I don't think it's 40, it's quite long, but like being able to not die for like X amount of time after you first get hit is extremely powerful. Especially considering a lot of the hunters in the current meta are just overall like normal attack hunters. You know, Opera, Hullabaloo, kind of. Well, Hullabaloo. Opera, Hullabaloo, Goatman, Shadow, like all of them have like normal swings. Like the meta isn't really shifting towards chip anymore. So as the meta shifts away from chip, Psychologist becomes a lot more powerful. So that basically means you can't down her until her stress is fully gone away. Otherwise, she will just heal at what's essentially full HP. So very obnoxious to deal with. She is very good. She's a very good support, and she's also very good. She's very hard to chase. So overall, Psychologist I think is very strong. Acrobat, in my opinion, is the best dedicated kiter. If you're not including Fire Investigator, who's basically a support, and Antiquarian, who's like Antiquarian, I think Acrobat is the best overall kiter. I think he's basically better than Patient. I think there's a lot of situations where Acrobat can just do some really just unfair jumps and just make a disgusting amount of distance. Acrobat, he basically gets 3 volts, and then he can also harass, and he also has base decoding. His only debuff is execute speed, which is pretty detrimental, but at the same time, it's not something that you really see come into play that often. Sometimes it does, but not as often as you think. So, I think Acrobat is extremely good, and I think he's probably the best kiter, and he's bad in basically no scenarios, and he's extremely good in certain scenarios. You know, things like Moonlit, he's basically unchaseable on Moonlit, and he's very good on Lakeside, and he's very good on Arms Factory, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I think Acrobat is probably the best kiter. Fire Investigator I think is severely underrated at anything that isn't high tier. The ability to get a through transition is unbelievably strong, and the fact that the Hunter has to sit there and break it basically means he gets a stun as well, which is very good. Fire Investigator is essentially unchaseable for certain characters, and also he allows a massive amount of rebounding potential if used properly by your teammates. He's also pretty good at rescuing because he can make a lot of distance to the chair, and overall I think he is just really powerful, and I think a lot more people should be playing him, and a lot more people should be learning to play him in the correct scenarios that he deserves to be played. So yeah, Fire Investigator I think is one of the best survivors in the game, and you should probably try to learn him. Seer, I think a couple of years ago, obviously he would have been like here, but I think the nerf from his owl speed, or his owl duration from, I think it was 20 seconds before, now it's like what, 8 seconds? I think that has made him a lot weaker. Just in terms of like, you know, you can really quickly, honestly wait it out and like bait it pretty easily, but it is still a global hit block. Like it is, you are still able to just block a hit from across the map, which is incredibly good, right? Like I cannot understate how good Seer Owl is. So even though they've nerfed it really hard, and they've now given him like the decoding progress debuff as well, which, let's be honest, is not that bad. I mean, like if you're using Seer to block an owl on first chase, I think you're trolling, unless it's like a character that has like way more rebound potential and can like really utilize that owl. So you're really only using that owl later on in the game, in which case the decoding buff won't necessarily matter. So I think Seer's recent nerf is not as big as people are making it out to be, but I think he is still extremely strong, and deserves to be at the top of Versatile Plus, because Seer is never bad, right? Seer is never bad. Being able to see the survivor, being able to see the hunters spawn, their rotation at the start of the game, and which hunter it is so valuable as well. Like it's such a strong ability that I think a lot of people like underutilize. So on top of that. On top of the fact that he isn't that bad of a kiter himself, and then also he can support his teammates from across the map, very good survivor, and I think deserves to be at the top of Versatile Plus. There was an argument where he could be meta, but I don't think he is anymore. So yeah. First Officer, there's not much to really talk about First Officer, because First Officer is just, he's a very stable rescuer. He's basically just worse than Merc, but I think he is just a very solid rescuer that is a lot harder to take advantage of than things like a Gravekeeper or a Journalist. So in that regard, I think he deserves to be in meta because basically in the current state of the game, in a lot of comps, if they ban mercenary, you just pick first officer. So I think he deserves to be in the top tier. Priestess, okay, I'm gonna say this now. I know Priestess is in meta, but I think she is overrated. I don't think Priestess is the best survivor in the game. I think far from it. I think the top 3 survivors are pretty clear of these two. Like, if anything, these are in like meta plus, and then these are in like meta, right? But I think Priestess is pretty overrated as far as she goes. But in certain situations, she is broken. On Moonlit, she's broken. Lakeside, she's broken. Hospital, she's broken. Leo's Memory, she's pretty good. Eversleeping, she's broken. Chinatown, she's broken. Like, she is broken. She's really broken on these maps, but then she's pretty much unusable on Arms. She's like pretty good on Church. She's like pretty good on Leo's. Like, I think she deserves to be meta because her only real bad map is Arms Factory. But I don't think she's as broken as people are making her out to be. But I still think she's extremely strong and deserves to be in the meta tier. Mechanic. A lot of people are going to be questioning this, I think. Because it's kind of a meme in the community where it's like, oh, better nerf Mechanic, and like in response to like anything. But like, bro, Mechanic is broken. Mechanic has been broken for ages, and then her recent buff made her so broken. Like, Mechanic is the only survivor that is able to decode on share. Mechanic is the only one that can cause 4 ciphers to be decoded at the same time while being chased and while being shared. She is the best TIE farmer in the game, as well as also being able to turn games into wins single-handedly by being able to decode on the chair. So you pretty much just finish an entire cipher. She is able to open the gate pretty much instantly, which is again extremely powerful. And on top of that, with the new meta coming out, where decoders are taking Windows and Flywheel, Mechanic becomes a lot stronger in these scenarios. The thing is, I think Mechanic is only good if you're good at her and your teammates know how to play around her. I think if you're just gonna take this tier list at face value and then pick Mechanic and like fucking Elk, then you're gonna lose every game, right? Because Mechanic needs kind of like a specific type of player to work and a specific kind of situation to be utilized properly. But if you know how to use Mechanic, then Mechanic is by far the best decoder. She's one of the best survivors in the game, and overall she is extremely broken, and I don't know why we buffed her. So I hope she's getting nerfed soon. Antiquarian, probably the best kiter against like 90% of characters. I know I said Acrobat is, but like Antiquarian's like in her own league. Antiquarian, she's a very good harasser. She's a very good rescuer. She's a very good kiter. Her only downside is that she opens the gate slower, but I'm pretty sure she opens it faster than Aggro, which is really funny. Her trail disappears slower, faster for some reason, and she can throw pallets faster, and so on and so forth. Like, this character has everything. This character has everything you want out of a character. She has free vaults. She has harass. She has good kite. She has good rescue. She has base decoding. She has no healing debuff, anything like that. So unless you are like facing a character that like kind of hard counters you, which really isn't many, then Antiquarian is basically the best Jack of all trades character in the game. You can pick her in any comp, any map, any situation, and she is pretty much always good. So that's why I think Antiquarian is the second best survivor in the game. The only survivor that can beat her is Mercenary. When I say other characters are like, you're never unhappy to see an Acrobat, or you're never unhappy to see an Antiquarian, or you're never unhappy to see an Aeroplanist or whatever. Mercenary is the definition of a character that you always want to see on your team. There is no reason to not have a Mercenary on your team. He is so reliable. He is so strong. He is so he's the safest rescuer. He's one of the safest kiters. His decoding debuff isn't even that bad. Like, his healing debuff usually doesn't come into play that much, especially if you're playing with Psychologist, which is an extremely common pairing, or a Barmaid, which is also an extremely common pairing. I mean, basically every common pairing. Mercenary is basically a common pairing for every single character. So, Mercenary is pretty undisputably the best character in the game, and so I think he deserves to be at the top of meta. And with that being said, I think that is everything that I wanted to say about the tier list. So I don't really have more to say. I've given like my 2 cents on every single character and their viability. If you have any questions or any like discussion that you want to make in the comments about like certain placement on this list, then please do. But other than that, I think I am done. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching to the end, especially because I know this has been on screen the entire time, so it's like kind of nice that you watch the entire thing despite just it being here. So I appreciate everyone who's still here, and I hope you have a good evening or morning or whatever you're going to do today. So yeah, good night and thank you for watching.